Hey everyone, welcome to the Growin Up Podcast. We're your hosts. My name's Nevaeh.
And my name's Amber.
And here on the Growin Up Podcast, we talk about everything and anything about growing up. So we hope that you stay tuned and join us for the conversation.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Scrums shook at the end of it. I don't know if you heard that, but she's like,
No,
congratulations, Mom.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Growin Up Podcast. I guess we can hop right into our learning sessions of the week. So if this is your first time listening, every week we like to start off with sharing something that we learned over the previous week. So yeah, I guess I can go first.
Yes, I went first last time. I just watched a video.
All right. So my learning for this week has to do with vinyl records and just like a record player in general. So a little backstory. I got my girlfriend a record player for Christmas, something she's always wanted. And honestly, something I've never had experience with or
Yeah.
I never had one. So over the past couple weeks and months, I've been learning a lot about how they actually work. And I think that the biggest thing is just I didn't realize that record players have grooves in them. That's the music. So when you actually put the record on the player and you play it, you can hear it if you put your ear really close.
So without a speaker?
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's just mind blowing to me because I've been watching videos on not TikTok because I don't have TikTok. But I've been watching videos of how they make vinyls, and it's insane how they actually are made, and that it's just the waves of the music on the outside. And I didn't realize also that it only fits maybe 4 songs per side. So it's
interesting.
Crazy.
I'm actually going to look into that because I feel like I had a general idea of how they work, but I don't think I knew how they were made.
Yeah, but it's been fun. It's been it's like a whole hobby in itself, so going to a record store and looking at records, and it's interesting. And I've been trying to look into records that are not well known, so just random old kind of records, I guess, in different genres, and trying different worldly types of music. So
I'm gonna get you a Beethoven one.
Oh,
I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, you're right. That would be cool.
Jess copped some really good ones though the other day. I seen on her story, and I was like, dang, those are some good ones.
Yeah, I think the one thing I'm excited about is if we have visitors over, I want to be able to provide a variety of music, using the vinyl player. So
yeah, it's so weird how because now those became popular, but now, and I don't know. I still think that even though it happens in a lot of instances with fashion and music and trends and whatnot, I think it's always interesting to see it come back. But that's cool.
Yeah, I think it's also something that you can dive into in itself, because we didn't get speakers. We've just been using a Bluetooth one right now, but after learning about all the different types of speakers that you can get, or what people want to hear with specific vinyl records, there's a different tune that they like to hear. So that'll be a whole thing we have to dig into to learn to know what we want out of our setup. Her setup.
I know, Amber. It sounds like you bought it for yourself.
No, it's a house thing.
That's cool though. I'm really excited for you. I know so growing up we had one of our grandmas, she had a vinyl player, and we used to play around on it because
we probably ruined
it. But we were like, oh wow, this is cool. And the music she had was always random as fuck too. So I was like,
yeah.
So now that they
make
maybe
I'll cop one of those random as fuck records.
I know. That'd be cool to look through those though and see what is in there. I'm sure there's some good good tracks in there. Is that what they call them in the vinyl?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't even know if I'm using the right terminology, but also it's not a cheap hobby. Let me just throw that out there. So if you're looking to get into a record player and vinyl, it's kind of expensive. So
interesting. I did not know that. I don't know why I didn't think that you needed speakers for them, but I guess that really makes sense that you would need a speaker.
Yeah, the one we got is you can do Bluetooth, but like I said, I think speakers enhance the sound of it. So
I guess that kind of makes sense though. I don't play too
Yeah.
much into like the bass and treble unless we listen to like recordings from at home and then we're like
Yeah.
bass.
No, that's one thing too. I seen this one guy and he was sharing records that are like Native American records. So like
Oh,
I've been looking at eBay to try to find some old like native records.
that'll be cool. Let me know when you get one.
Yeah, I will. Anyways.
My learning topic is I put in my notes, so I don't know if y'all know
Oh
this,
my
but
gosh.
I actually did. I learned this one not too long ago. I think it was like Friday night or Friday, sometime during Friday. So, I've been on this whole journey of bettering myself as a young 20-year-old in this society. So,
Yeah.
one thing I struggle with is discipline and like procrastinating a lot. So, I learned about the 5-second rule. So, apparently, you have about 5 seconds before your brain chooses to either act on an action or starts to really compensate for like why you shouldn't do it, and really kind of that what kind of prohibits you from actually doing what you want to do. So the 5-second rule is basically, you tell yourself like kind of like a kid, which is kind of interesting to know that like, growing up, they would be like, I'm gonna count down to 5, or I'm gonna count to 5 and you better be like in your seats, or you better be like,
Hmm.
cleaning this up. So it's like kind of training myself back into that mentality of being like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then going up and doing whatever I need to do, and not taking that time to be like, okay, like, should I do it? Do I want to do it? I can do it
Hmm.
later and whatnot. So that's something I learned. And the like YouTuber that was talking on it, I don't know, she seems pretty productive. So I might just have to give it a whirl and
Start counting.
start counting down for myself. But I don't know. I thought that was really interesting because, like, I feel like any little thing could help, and just trying it, like, it could or could not work for myself. Every individual is different.
Yeah.
But these little things, such as like counting down, even though it, like, brings you back to like being a child and whatnot. Maybe that's why they did it when you were a child. Maybe there is some sort of like reasoning behind this idea of counting down and that feeling of time that that I'm so scared of.
True. That's that's a good technique. I've heard of people who like commit to, I think it's 5 minutes of everything. So if you're debating on doing something, always do at least 5 minutes of it. Okay,
Mm,
example. So like the gym, if you don't want to go to the gym, like you should commit to 5 minutes. So by the time you drive to the gym and you're like, oh, I only need to be here for 5 minutes, like you're like, oh, I'm already here. I might as well do it.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's funny too because I'm a research coordinator. I basically recruit people to do research and whatnot, and a lot of it they compare to like, which, like, it could sound bad, but like selling something, like you have
Hmm.
about like 30 seconds with the individual before they completely lose interest and make up their mind. So if you're not highlighting the importance of being in research, or like the benefits of being in research, and getting those big topics out of the way, like
Hmm.
in that 30 seconds, you're going to lose the enrollment of a patient. And like, with science, numbers means a lot. So like you
Yeah.
want these people to enroll, but you also want them to have cautious a cautious decision in whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it kind of turned back on myself, and I'm like, damn it, mate. You got 5 seconds before you got to go to the gym, get up and make
Right.
your bed or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. That's probably why I didn't do so good in retail because I'm not good at selling.
Yeah, it's hard. It really is hard. And like all of the trainings, they usually tie it back to that. And I don't know, maybe I could sell a car now.
Oh my god. Okay, don't be tooting your horn too much. That's a cool technique though. I think
Yeah.
that's something to try to keep yourself accountable.
Yeah. I'll let y'all know how it works. I'm going to give it a whirl since I've learned about it, and I'll give y'all an update on where I'm at with it.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Awesome. Well, moving into today's topic, it was actually inspired by one of our listeners and one of my old friends. So thanks for the suggestion on this. But we've talked a little bit about our past experience of going to college and getting the degrees that we have. But today we were thinking about diving a little bit more into that and talking about our journeys, because they're completely different journeys, which you'll kind of learn a little bit about. Nevaeh went to college right out of high school, and mine took a couple of turns and swirls and and twirls. But we both ended up at the same spot, sort of. And I think it'd be kind of valuable for us to kind of share the journey that we went on with you guys who are actually interested in going to college or going back to college, or getting a further degree than what you have. So yeah, we'll kind of just dive right into that, and Nevaeh will kind of share her experience. And yeah.
Yeah. So for me, again, yeah, I did go to college straight out of high school. I guess like kind of the background of like why I kind of did that and why I wanted to go to college overall was because I always knew that it was something that I could always keep in my back pocket no matter the situation, where we're at in life. I always knew that college was something that would benefit me and keep me afloat almost in this very crazy world that we live in. So that's kind of my main reason why I was very dedicated to going to school right out of high school. So I also knew at that time that I did not want to go to school in state. So again, we're from Arizona, but I actually got my undergrad degree at the University of Minnesota, Rochester. So I actually, fun fact, applied to more colleges in Minnesota than I did in Arizona. I only applied to one college in Arizona, which was U of A. So go Wildcats. I always love my Wildcats down there. But I knew I wanted that experience away from home and being able to make more friends and learn more about the world. Grew up again solely in northern Arizona, so I wanted that to be something that I highlight during my time in college and can also like contribute to what I take home, which is obviously my ultimate goal is to become a doctor and return back to northern Arizona and serve college athletes, high school athletes, any kind of really athlete that is native. So that's kind of where I'm heading towards. But
Question.
yes.
When did you decide that you wanted to like pursue that? Like, when did that become
Yeah.
your goal?
Yeah. It's always funny because, I myself I'm not an athlete. I I like didn't I played volleyball a lot in since I was like maybe like in sixth, seventh grade, and then I played up until my junior year in college. College, oh my gosh, I wish. High school. And when I was in high school, actually, it kind of stemmed from Amber. So it's funny how me and Amber's, I guess, relationship when it comes to school bounced off each other in different instances. So when Amber was in high school, we went to the same high school, Flag High. Shout out shout out Deep Book for hyping up Flagstaff. But she told me about a time where she was taking a sports medicine class and she came home, she was all excited, she was wrapping my ankle and doing all this cool stuff and showing me all the photos they did in athletic training, and I was like, oh my gosh, that seems so fun. So when I got into high school, I knew that I wanted to do that class. I wanted to be in sports medicine. I've always had an interest in, I guess, the STEM field, but I guess I didn't really think about it. I really just wanted to learn anatomy. I'm gonna be honest. Like I really just wanted to learn anatomy, and we didn't have like a designated anatomy and physiology class at Flag
Hmm.
High. So I was like, okay, well, this is like at least an entryway into it all. Ended up taking like, I guess they call it like a CTE rotation where you only do like a quarter of that certain class. So I did like child development, sports medicine, I don't know, a bunch of other stuff too.
Hmm.
But when I got to sports medicine, it's actually funny because when I was in middle school, I took high school biology, and my my TA was a teacher from, or a studying teacher from NAU. And I remember like, we got along very well. Like she just was a really good teacher. I really liked her. I
Yeah.
step into my sports med class and there she is teaching sports med.
Oh.
And I was like, wow, like, oh my gosh, you remember me? She's like, how can I not remember you? Like, you talk a lot. And I'm like, oh, dang. But
Don't
she
worry.
ended up kind of like helping me get into it. I ended up taking Sports Med 1, Sports Med 2 in up until my junior year. And then I was also an athletic training intern for my senior year. So I was actually on the sidelines. I learned how to tape ankles, and I would tape ankles for athletes. I would work on rehabilitation with athletes. And that's kind of where my interest, I guess, in sports medicine took place. And then also, I guess, like we have a background in like my uncle coaches. My mom back in the day used to hype up her coaching abilities, and like we have cousins that play basketball. So like we've always been, I guess, around sports, but I would say not as much as a lot of other people. But we had a gist of what it was like, and that's really where it stemmed from. And then after I got to college, which at the University of Minnesota Rochester, it actually is a pre-med college. So there's actually only 2 majors you can have, which is health professions or health sciences. And I chose health sciences on the pre-med route. And that's kind of where I was like, okay, well, maybe this is something I can do long-term as a doctor. I would like, and even now, like I still work in orthopedics, and I actually worked on an orthopedic floor inpatient as a patient care assistant during college as well. So I've always just kind of been surrounded by bones and the skeletal
Yeah.
system, which is what I enjoy. But it's been a lot. I think that going straight to college, there's a lot of things that I think I benefited from. Like the timeline is pretty much laid out for you when you're in high school and applying for college. So they do let you know, like, oh, this is early decision in the beginning of the semester of your senior year, and especially if everybody kind of doesn't have an idea of what they want to do, or they do have a really strong idea of what they want to do. So I think I knew that I had enough confidence in what I wanted to do. So I applied to colleges all early decision. I actually, my like biggest goal was to go to the Twin Cities campus. But fun fact, my sister actually took me to tour the couple colleges that I did apply to in Minnesota. And the day before I went to tour the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, I got denied after being put on a wait list. So that was really tough for me. It was really sad because then I still had to go tour the school, even though I got denied. And I asked them, I talked to the advisors there. I was like, hey, I got denied. And they basically said that there was nothing that they could do because it was already a decision that was made. And so that kind of led me to where I got my undergrad degree from, which is the Rochester campus, which is kind of like a sub campus of the Minnesota campus, which in all ended up being the best scenario for me because when I was looking into it, I realized that the in-state and out-of-state tuition for that specific campus was the same. So compared to the Twin Cities, where I would have to be paying obviously a lot more money because I was an out-of-state individual. So that helped me a lot. And I think looking back, that was probably the best decision I could have made because I am debt-free from going to school, which, not a lot of people unfortunately have the ability to say that. So I'm think everything led me to where I think I should have been. And I don't think I regret the decisions I made going straight out of high school. And I even looking back now, like I'm so proud to see that, like at the age that I am, what I've accomplished. And, I always tell people that if I didn't go straight to college, or if I went to college in Arizona, I don't think I would have made it this far because like I am a very like, I love family, and it's also very hard to navigate the two and also, keep yourself in that groove. So I think going away to college, being there, still going straight through, like I don't regret any of it really.
Yeah. So you graduated high school, you went to University of Minnesota in Rochester, and you was University of Rochester somewhere that you like also applied to?
No, not right off the
in high
bat.
school?
I actually, after I got denied from the Twin Cities campus, I had made plans to actually attend a 2-year institution that was at in Minneapolis, and my goal was to attend a 2-year institution and then transfer to the Twin Cities campus. So that's kind of where I was at with that after I got denied. But a couple weeks after we got back from Minnesota from touring them and whatnot, I actually got an email from the admissions office at the Rochester campus asking if they would like to share, if I would like to share my Twin Cities application with them with no cost. So I was like, okay, like, why not? I did look into the school as well because I actually didn't know it exists. It was actually a school that opened, I think, in like 2007, 2008. So it's a fairly new institution. So I looked into it. I was like, okay, well, this looks great. Like, obviously, I didn't know that the Mayo Clinic was there as well. There was a lot of things I didn't know about, like Rochester, honestly. You'll kind of see a trend in, as I kind of talk through my education, but I've never been to Rochester. And I shared my application. They got back to me. I was admitted. They also offered me a scholarship to be part of their it's called Health Corps. It's like a living learning community. So basically you go to the campus a couple weeks before everybody else get to campus. You live on the same floor as all of these people in this learning living community. So we all lived on the same floor. So we spend that week getting to know each other. It is a community that's guided towards minority populations, so, or people that, like, you know, come from a minority group, whatever that might be. So that was kind of nice to be able to, like, obviously meet friends. That's where I met my best friend as well, in that kind of living learning community. I also got a scholarship off of it, which was super nice. And so that kind of ultimately is like why I was like, okay, maybe Rochester wouldn't be a bad situation. But yeah, I didn't go to Rochester until I went there for registration. So
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got a scholarship from Rochester. How else were you, like, did that cover your full tuition or?
It did not. Again, like, we paid the same thing as in-state tuition. So whatever I covered else with my initial start into the school year, I love applying for scholarships, and I really am a big advocate for applying for scholarships. So I actually also applied to a bunch of local scholarships in northern Arizona, a lot of like American Indian, Alaska Native guided scholarships. So I think when I left high school, I had at least 5 scholarships underneath my belt. But again, that was really only for the first semester. But I throughout my time at Rochester, I've applied for ACES scholarships. I've applied for Native Forge scholarships. So really taking advantage of those American Indian, Alaska Native grants and scholarships is what kind of got me through. And then also our tribal scholarship as well. So yeah,
okay,
it helped out.
Yeah. So I mean, I remember in high school, so they taught us a lot about applying for scholarships, you know?
Yeah.
So scholarships, usually, unless they're like a 4-year scholarship, they're only for like the next semester, right?
Yeah.
So is applying for scholarships something you did like continuously throughout all 4 years?
Yeah. Yeah. So usually it depends. I think majority of them will go through like a school year. So it'll cover from like whatever year you started to the end of it. But they do come like in separate bundles, I guess. But also, again, it depends, because I also applied for like really local scholarships where it was really just giving me money to get to college or whatnot. So it was like a flat rate for getting you to college, and you can use for books, travel expenses, whatever, like those kind of costs and whatnot. But I did apply every single year for different scholarships, which, you know, some are more lengthier than other. I've applied for the Cobell scholarship, which I actually was a recipient of. That was probably the most lengthiest scholarship I've ever applied for, but it did help me a lot going through college. But yeah, I applied every single year. So just a couple tips for those of you who are either in high school or looking to apply to different scholarships and finding ways to cover your funding in your school, that you can, there's no such thing as having too much scholarships. So apply for as many scholarships as you can take. Just apply. I think that there's a misconception that, you know, like, oh, like, I already received a scholarship, I don't need to get another one. You can get as many scholarships as you want. And there's ways to get around that. Other thing, keep your like whatever letters or whatever essays you're writing for your scholarships. I still have all of my scholarship essays from high school saved in a folder. And sometimes when I apply for new scholarships, I'll pull from those previous scholarship essays and kind of use that to help guide something that I have already written and have already known. Or it kind of allows me to also reflect on like, okay, how has this changed and where am I at now? So I literally keep all of my essays from
That's a
any
good
kind of
idea.
scholarships, programs, anything along those lines. And also keeping a list of everything that you've done, every experience you've had that you think was pivotal in your life, or any kind of achievements you've gotten, things of those natures. I think it's always important to kind of keep a list, and it'll also help you with resumes, CVs, things of those nature as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
what else? I think that, yeah, yeah.
how did you find like all these scholarships?
Um, I used Google, good old Google, for the most part. I think also having a American Indian advisor in high school, that helped me a lot as well. We were really close as a class with our advisor in high school, so he would always ensure that we knew of these opportunities. I
Yeah.
also kind of just like always had interest in being involved in these larger groups, after being a part of like different summer programs and whatnot. Like you learn about ACEs, you learn about Unity, you learn about all these bigger Native American organizations. So I think it was really just word of mouth, a lot of searching, and then also just looking at the resources that the university provides as well. So they will list all of the scholarships that are available, or that are like some of the previous students have gotten before. So that's kind of really where I got most of the scholarships information that I
Oh,
applied for. Mm-hmm.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got all these scholarships. You went to school. Now you're at school. Did you stay in the dorm? Were you off campus?
Yeah, that was also a nice thing. And I think that my experience at a smaller university is very unique compared to those who go to like a bigger 4-year institution that, you get the typical dorm life and whatnot.
Yeah.
But because my institution was so new and there was only like two majors, so that meant the classes were super small. Like I think our class sizes were like 20 people maybe, compared to like a big lecture hall where there's over hundreds of people taking, English 101 or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So living was kind of the same situation, because there wasn't a lot of students. We actually got, I guess, what you could call an apartment. But I actually chose the cheapest option and got a studio, who I shared with a roommate. So I guess it was kind of very similar to like what you would expect being at a 4-year institution in the dorms, I guess. But the only difference is that we got a kitchen, and we got our own bathroom, and we got our own washer and dryer as well, which is luxury
Wow.
compared to what I've heard other people experiencing in their 4-year college.
Mhm.
But I got very lucky there, and I stayed there, I think, for the first maybe year and a half, and then I moved off of campus.
Gotcha. Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So it was, I think it was a good experience. We didn't have like dining halls, and that was the only thing, is like they expected us to cook our own food being college students. But I think that also helped me a lot early on, trying to figure out like what a
Yeah.
healthy, nutritious diet looks like and whatnot. So I don't think I would have
Yeah.
gotten that had I been, somewhere where I was only limited to the fast food restaurants around me, or the dining
Yeah.
hall food and whatnot. So
Cool. Hmm.
yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't even think about like
Hmm.
dining halls, but they gave you a nice kitchen, so
They did give us nice kitchens.
they
And
said learn.
they did. Our first activity when we got to like the learning living community was they gave us like some vouchers to go to the like nearby grocery store, and they were like,
Oh.
cook your favorite dish. So like we just a bunch of college students cooking their favorite dishes, and it actually was like pretty decent. Like people made pizza, people made spring rolls, I made enchiladas, like
I remember that. That's
yeah, I
funny.
was like, dang, we're really cooking down over here.
That's that's funny.
Yeah, so it was a good time. I like, again, I don't regret any kind of decision that I made uh going as far as I did in college. And I actually, again, had a very almost traditional, but untraditional. Like I did graduate college in 3 years because I had so many college credits in high school. So I finished up early there. I worked as a PCA part-time during my last year of college.
Mm-hmm.
So that was awesome experience. But I think a lot of it had to do with the institution I chose and the environment around me, because I got so many opportunities that were very like impactful in my life and my professional realm, I guess. So
Yeah.
it was a good time. It was a good time. And then I went straight into my grad program.
So what did you get your undergrad degree in?
I got a bachelor's of science in health sciences. So again, there was literally only two things you could choose from. But
Oh, gotcha.
yeah, the health professions, you could have done like sonography, radiology, and all at the Mayo Clinic School of Science, I think it was, or something like that.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
really cool.
so it was a pretty good deal. And I was able to take all of my pre med classes through health science. So it was very generic. Again, I don't think I could actually do anything with my actual bachelor's degree. Like the idea was that, you know, for a lot of people at that school was that they either want to go to med school, they wanted to be a physician's assistant, or, you know, they wanted to be a nurse. So like that's really what they supplemented it for. But
Gotcha.
yeah, which again, it was kind of controversial because there was a lot of people that were like, okay, maybe this is not for me. And they actually had to like transfer out of the university because like we did not have any like business courses. We didn't have any like
Oh,
designated public health classes. Like it was very limited. So everybody that went to school there wanted to be some sort of health profession that required an additional program afterwards.
gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when did you start applying to grad school, or like what made you determine? Well, I guess that kind of helped you determine that you needed to go to get your master's.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Like a lot of people that I went to school with, they ended up applying for medical school right away.
Hmm.
But I knew that with me graduating college in 3 years, I would have had to been studying for the MCAT my sophomore year of college and have taken it by the time I was in that position. And I knew that I was still young, and I didn't think for, you know, the benefit of my future patients, I do think that I needed a lot of growing up to do before putting myself in that situation and allowing me to succeed at it. Cause I could imagine myself being super young and vulnerable and going into medical school and not knowing a thing and just kind of feeling below, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what led me to considering a master's program prior to applying to medical school, because I knew that I wanted to learn more and get more experience, especially because my university wasn't able to give me like specialized kind of courses and whatnot. So that's kind of
Hmm.
where it led me to applying to the program that I did here at the University of North Carolina. But I actually applied to two programs. I applied to the Twin Cities campus for kinesiology, and then I applied here for exercise and sports science with a concentration in exercise physiology. And I knew that that would also help with me wanting to go into sports medicine. It would allow for me to kind of get more of the experience working in like active populations versus just like generic populations.
Hmm.
So that's kind of why I applied to a master's program. So yeah, yeah.
And what was that application process like? Was it the same as undergrad, or was it more rigorous?
I would say the timeline, again, that when you're in college, you know, they're able to kind of provide guidance for you. That was a big thing too that my university promoted was advisors. And, you know, I know with larger institutions, it's a little bit harder to meet with your advisor. But because I went to a smaller institution, I did get that kind of like specific help that I needed from my advisor, which was super nice.
Hmm.
But the application process is pretty similar. You find out your decision though a little bit earlier because ideally graduate programs are not as big of a application bundle, I guess, or people, the amount of people that apply for it, it's not as much.
Yeah.
So I literally heard back in January from the Minnesota campus, and then I heard back from the North Carolina campus. I will say that their application process was very different. I actually did an interview for North Carolina where I had like kind of a brief introduction versus an interview for Minnesota. So again, it kind of depends on whatever program you're doing and how big it is. I think that will kind of determine, but it kind of really followed the same, I guess, timeline as as of applying and as far as like scholarships and whatnot. Again, it gets a little bit different there because I also was able to go to grad school without any kind of leftover loans and whatnot. So that was nice, but I think that the scholarships look a lot different for applying to graduate programs, and also FAFSA looks a lot different for applying as a graduate student, which I did not know. Like I didn't know you didn't get grants in grad school. I thought you always did. And I was like, wow.
So you got a scholarship from UNC.
Yeah, I got a scholarship from UNC. It was actually, I guess you couldn't really call it a scholarship. It's a stipend is what they call it. So you actually work as a TA during your time at UNC. So I actually worked as a teaching assistant, teaching undergrads, I guess you could call like physical education classes. So I taught like outdoor sports, indoor sports, sand volleyball, exercise and conditioning, which was very out of my, I would have never guessed that I would have been, I guess, a glorified PE teacher is what my students used to call me. So I think it was fun though. It was fun. Honestly, I would rather be outside playing ultimate frisbee with my students. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, that's actually a good gig for like a TA.
Yeah.
Most of them, you're teaching like chemistry or English or something.
Exactly. And it paid for my school, but also gave me like a living stipend as well. So like I was able to still be paid on top of my school being paid, which, again, is not a bad gig at all. Like I think that's why I ultimately chose the program, and obviously the reputation of EXSS here at UNC. But it definitely was a learning experience for sure applying to grad school. I didn't know what I was going to get into when I was applying to grad school, but I do think it is attainable for sure.
Yeah. So how long was your like grad school? Was it 2 years?
2 years. Yeah, 2 years. So, for grad school, it differs for each program. So my grad program specifically, you are expected to take a comps test, basically testing your knowledge in whatever it is that you're getting your master's degree in, and then also completing a thesis as well. So I did both of those. Again, but I've also heard programs where like you don't have to do a comps test. You can do either or some of them just require the test, no thesis. Some of them call like their thesis a capstone. But I did a capstone at my undergrad too.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. But that's a little bit about, I guess, like my overall education and how I got through college. It definitely was a little bit, I would say, very much structured. I think compared to like, I guess, what do they call them? A non-traditional student. So I think that helped me a lot, answered a lot of the questions that I did have because, those resources are there for you in the moments that you need them. But I would say that it is a lot more research of trying to figure out what you want to do. And obviously, because you don't have that time to reflect on yourself as an individual, I could see where people can get caught up in the idea of going like, straight from high school to college and then straight from college to grad school. Because like in the end, when you're finishing college or your grad program at 25, 26, like you're a completely different individual than you were when you were graduating college at like 22, 23. So I could see how there could be some tough turns going straight through and then, resulting in something that might not necessarily be what you enjoy in the long run. So but again, I enjoy it. I enjoy it. And my journey does not stop here. I am in the mix of applying to medical school. So I will report to you all how that whole process goes because I feel like, again, each one kind of gets a little bit unique, a little bit different, and a little bit more aggressive, I would say, as far as like the application itself and the deadlines, because I myself am still trying to get a grasp on when things need to be done, how fast they need to be done, what are they looking for. So it's definitely not a journey that's going to stop anytime soon. But I am enjoying this gap year, quote unquote, that I'm having here. So it's different not being in school for the first time since I was like in kindergarten.
That's funny. Yeah. Huh.
But again,
Wow.
like, yeah, we had very different experiences as far as like going to school. I feel like we had very similar instances in the beginning. Like, me and Amber both did similar, what would you call them? College readiness? No, not college readiness.
Yeah. I think it's called dual enrollment.
Yeah. Okay. Dual enrollment. Yeah. We had like very much similar there. And that's actually why I did that, because my wonderful sister here would hype it up when she brought home her biology book from
Oh my
her
God.
CCC class, her community college class.
Yeah. I think that's a good like heads up to if you're still in high school and they offer those like dual enrollment college readiness courses where you actually get to get college credit while in high school. Like I would definitely hop on that because that
Yeah.
has saved me. Like you'll hear my story, but those credits like saved me years later when I decided, to go back to college. So I would definitely take those if they're offered.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good way to get out those like general education classes that if you decide to go to a big university, you'll be sitting in a class with like hundreds of students.
Yeah. And they're
So
so
it's like,
much cheaper. They're
yep.
so much cheaper than taking them at a 4-year or 2-year institution because you get the
Hmm.
college quote unquote rate of,
Yeah.
but in high school rate. Yeah.
Yeah. So we both did that in high school, and that's kind of like what at least jump started us in going to college. So for me, I guess like doing that helped me transition into college because we're both I guess, are you technically a first generation college student?
Yeah. We're first gen. Yeah.
Oh, it can be both people.
Yeah. First gen. We're
I
the
guess we
same
were racing
generation.
anyway. Right.
I
Uh, so we're
know.
so we're both first generation college students, and it was like our mom was beginning to take college courses when we were in our like middle school, high school phases. So luckily, we also kind of we all went to college together, us and our mom. But those classes really helped me with learning what college was like.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think that is what I gained the most out of that and being in those dual enrollment classes because I had no idea what I was going to expect. And when you start that, like shit gets real
Oh,
real quick.
yeah.
Like when you realize that like that's going to be stuck with you forever, like you should totally know what you're getting into before you do it. But that really helped me with the mentality of like, okay, college is something I can do, something I'm capable of doing. Um, so yeah, that's what I started with. I went to the dual enrollment. I also did a couple of like high school summer programs that help with also the transition to college. Nevaeh mentioned a couple of those, like I forgot what yours are called, but
Yeah.
what was it called at U of A?
Oh, NASEP, the Native American
NASEP.
Science and Engineering
Yeah,
Program.
I went to something called Upward Bound, but there are a lot of like other college readiness programs that colleges
Yeah.
offer. So yeah, I didn't know that I wanted to go to where I wanted to go to college. I was kind of a little more lost in that realm. I did apply to out of state colleges, but I mostly applied to all of the in state colleges because I guess that was just kind of where I was at in life. And also, I think what I didn't know what was capable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went to U of A. That was where I initially got into college outside of high school, and I was going to go for nursing. So the program that I did in high school was actually a like pre-med kind of route. So a lot of it
Mhm.
was like anatomy, nutrition, like that's the kind of classes you took. So it was people who wanted to get into medical field.
Yeah.
So I thought I wanted to get into medical field, and that's why I went to U of A to go pursue nursing. So I started at U of A. Total culture shock. I thought I was ready for college, but when I walked into like a chemistry class with 250 kids, like that was so mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
Like it was so insane to go into an auditorium and learn. And I think that long story short, I dropped out of U of A after changing my degree. And then I was so close to graduation. I think I only needed like a year left. And I was overwhelmed with I didn't really know what I wanted to do at the time. And nursing and the sciences didn't seem like it was really fitting me the way I thought it was going to be. And I think one thing that really scared me when I was going to U of A was they told me that I needed to start looking for internships in my degree. And at the
Mm.
time, my degree was family studies in human development, which is basically like a good route if you want to get into nonprofit. And like I like the route because my mom's always been a nonprofit. Like that was something, it
Yeah.
would have been something similar to what my mom was doing. But when I started looking into internships, I think it scared me because I
Yeah.
was like, is this really something that I want to do? So I kind of got a little overwhelmed with that. And on top of that, there was some things internally, like I think I grew up a little too fast. So
Mm.
I was like not mentally in a state where I was capable of staying in college, I guess. Basically, I had other intentions with my time and I wasn't balancing school, work, social life. Like it just wasn't working out for me. And unfortunately, I failed a semester and I got on to probation the second semester. I did great that semester, but by the following semester, I couldn't do it. I ended up dropping out in the middle of a semester, unfortunately. And this will come back at me to haunt me for the rest of my life. But you live and you learn, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I ended up dropping out my third semester at U of A. And I started working like in fast food. That's kind of what I was working in. And I was a little disappointed in myself because one, I hadn't told my mom. I hadn't told anyone actually.
Yeah.
I
She
just
did
kind of
it.
dropped out. Yeah, and the worst part was I had a full ride scholarship to U of A. Like
I was gonna ask that. Yeah.
I only applied to one scholarship. Oh, actually, it was what got me in it as well. So one scholarship paid for everything, full ride, and then obviously the tribal scholarship that I was also getting. So I lost
Question.
that.
Question.
Yes.
Was that scholarship like geared toward like a specific program, or was it kind of, because I know like,
Yeah.
they have like different ranks within bigger university of like how much kind of scholarships you get and whatnot.
Yeah. It was called Arizona for Connect or something like that. It
Mm,
was basically geared toward first generation low income families.
got it. Got it.
So you had to have a really strict family income and first generation. That was kind of like the big prereqs. And we did have to do like we had to go to meetings, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was honestly it was a really good program and it didn't require a lot of input,
Mhm.
but you got a lot of output of it. So
Yeah.
really good scholarship. And so I lost that basically, dropped out in the middle of the school year. And it sucked because this is when I really learned consequences, I think, and I realized that I was in real life because a couple months later, because I took a scholarship and I dropped out before a certain time period, I had to owe back the money to the scholarship for that semester. So
Mm,
I was like, they actually told me, they were like, if you can prove that you were in class after this date, like you don't have to owe it. But I literally stopped going to classes the week before. I kid you not. Like 1 week, I was 1 week away from that deadline.
what?
And they were like, if you can show me like you turned in an assignment or if your professor like checked you off a box, I was 1 week away from
Yeah.
that. But I ended up having to pay the money back, and that was like on
Yeah.
top of what I was doing. And I didn't move into on campus living, which may have changed the outcome of it. But
Yeah.
I got my own apartment right out of high school and moved down to Tucson.
Question.
Yes.
Because I know nowadays some institutions require the first year individuals now to live on
Mhm.
campus. Was that a thing during the time you went to college? Because I know like that was how it was at my college. Like some people were like, "Oh, we don't want to live
Mhm.
here," but like you had to live there unless you could prove like you needed accommodations for
Yeah.
living elsewhere.
I think it was, but I think because I had so much college credit from high school, I was considered a transfer student.
Oh,
I wasn't considered like a incoming freshman.
yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, so I got out of it. Um but anyways, yeah, I went through the toil of not telling my mom or anybody that I had dropped out of college, and honestly, I hid that for almost a good year.
Oh yeah,
And
she did.
it was tough. It was so tough. Like,
Impressive. Impressive.
yeah, Yeah, it was very tough on myself, and I kind of felt like I like let a lot of people down because again, I was a first generation, like literally the first person to go to college like that at a big school, and um I just felt like a lot of people depended on me, which I think now I shouldn't have thought about it like that, but that's how I kind of thought about it.
Mhm.
So I dropped out, and I dropped out for about 6 years. So I took a 6 year gap year. And it's funny because when I first dropped out of college and I started getting like a good thing going for myself, like after I dropped out, I kind of talked about this, but I became a general manager at a Jimmy John's, a little bit higher than that. I was actually doing really good as a manager, and I was making a decent amount of money for like not going to college.
Mhm.
And I had this mentality at first, like, oh, like I'm never going to go back to college. I was kind of upset. I think I just had a lot of emotion around the idea of college. And like I said, like I dropped out. So um, I had this big old mentality that I didn't need college. I didn't want to go to college. And I was set on that mindset until I had moved cities with the company I was working for. So I
Mhm.
went to take on some new locations in Phoenix. So I moved to Phoenix at this point. And I started to think about like everything that I was doing. And I think the biggest kind of niche, or not niche, the biggest trigger in my mind was when I met my girlfriend. My
Mhm.
girlfriend actually went to college well, she started in junior college in Arizona, and then she went to a college in Nebraska, and she played basketball. And when I met her, she was kind of like the first person who I knew that went out of state as a Native American and pursued college. And I think that was really inspiring to me and kind of got me back in that mentality of like, I want to be like that. I need to finish my degree. And I think it came a point in the 6 years that I took off where it was like, I wanted to complete something because I felt like I left it unfinished.
Yeah.
And it's probably because I dropped out in the middle of the year. And I think that's kind of what like lingered with me is like, I could have just finished.
Yeah.
Like, even if
Yeah.
I never got into that field. So that's when I decided that I wanted to go back. I just had this big old mind switch where I was like, okay, like I got to a point in my life where I was comfortable of like, I can step back from working so much and I can go to school.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I had actually decided that I wanted to go back, and I went to a community college in Phoenix. And at the point, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to go to school for yet. I was still figuring myself out in that
Yeah.
terms. So I just went for communication because I like talking, and I think that
Yeah.
I one thing that I really want to do was motivational speaking. Like that was kind of what actually really inspired me to go for communication. Um, so I went and got an associate's degree for communication. Now, the part here that comes back again, consequences, is when I tried applying for FAFSA and for my tribal scholarship, I got denied because I dropped out of school the first time, even though it was 6 years ago. Like that stuff lingers, that stuff stays
Yeah.
with you. And so I got denied. I was no longer eligible for grants because I ruined it the first time. And the tribal scholarship, they told me that my GPA was too low because I dropped out in the middle of the semester and I failed my first semester. So,
Oh.
like, I had too low of a GPA. And, yeah. So the first year I had to pay out of pocket, like the first semester of community college when I went back for communications, I paid out of my pocket. Again, I understand for a lot of people that's really hard, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it was, again, it's a consequence, and that's kind of the situation I put myself in. So I stepped down from being a GM,
Mhm. That's
and
smart.
I started kind of just working part time. I was still a lead, I think, but I was working part time, and I was going to classes at the community college, and I wanted to do it in person. Like I fondled around with the idea of going online, but I
Yeah.
really wanted to go back because I thought that that was the only way I was going to be able to make myself go back.
Yeah. I have a question. What was that process of getting back into school like? Because I know there's a very big difference between like applications for a 2-year college versus a 4-year
Yeah.
college, and like was there any like resources, an advisor, or like how did that discussion look like going back into it?
Yeah. I think that I'm very independent, and sometimes it can be a bad thing, but I just did a lot of research. Like I just
Mm,
Googled a lot, and I looked at the like community college website, and I knew that you can literally apply to community college at any time, which is the great thing about it is
yeah.
you can apply to it anytime you want throughout the year. Obviously, you're gonna have to wait for the semester start, but because I knew I was gonna have to be paying for my own, tuition, like
Yeah.
I started whenever I wanted. So I started in the fall, and I did get an advisor, but I didn't really use him a lot until I started looking like for the next steps. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, I think a lot of it was I was just emailing back and forwards. So
Yeah, which is a good
it,
start, I feel like, to
yeah,
send like initial emails to people about interest, because I think that kind of allows you to get at least a resource to do your own research, you know?
yeah, yeah. So applying back wasn't hard. I think the harder part too was that because I have had previous experience in college, I had to get transcripts from U of A and from the community college I went
Mm,
to when I was in high school.
yeah.
So that was probably the hardest part was being able to get those transcripts and learning what that process is like.
Yeah,
But
big
once I
tip
got,
for people. Like,
yeah,
big tip. Get your
yeah,
transcript, know your logins, know how to get your transcripts,
yeah,
because if you're taking college classes in high school, you are gonna need them, and sometimes it can be a hassle for you to get the
yeah. And this is when it comes in handy because when I applied to go back for my associate's degree, all those credits transferred, even the ones that were kind of shitty from U of A, like they still helped me a lot. So
Okay.
I had basically I was at my 2-year program. The only reason I only stayed at the community college for 2 semesters, and then I got my degree because I had so many previous credits that
Ah,
I
yeah.
just basically took all the communication classes and called it a communications degree.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I think I could have got a general one if I wanted with less time, but I wanted it specifically in that.
Mhm.
So I did that. And then I was like, okay, like I want to continue on and get my bachelor's degree. And at this point, with all my experience and being a general manager and stuff, I was starting to connect the dots and I was like business is my shit. Like I became a really good leader. Learned how to run stores that were very successful. And, it took me so far in that job. So that was when I came to the conclusion that I wanted to do my undergrad in business. So
Mm.
I didn't want to go to ASU, Wildcats, So there was another school when I was in high school that I debated between that I also got into when I went to U of A, and that was GCU. So GCU has always had a little special place in my heart because that I toured that school so many times when I was in high school, and I just really liked the campus at the time when I was in high school. It was still growing and it was still new,
Mhm.
but by this time it was more established. So that was my first choice. I was like, I want to go to GCU.
Mhm.
So I started talking to an advisor at the community college that I went to, and he works directly with GCU. So he kind of gave me all my options of the degrees that I could take, whether that's business management, business admin, and, all those businessy degrees. And it seemed like a pretty smooth process. And luckily, he helped me out a lot in kind of showing how long I would be there, what classes I would like. He laid it all out for me on my
Yeah.
papers. And he's like, you have a lot of credits. Some of those are even university like
Level
size
credits.
credits.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's like, you don't have a lot left. So I was like, okay. I applied to GCU, got in, and I think it's like you said, it's easier to get into universities if you go to community college first because they usually have those further
Yeah.
transition programs.
Mhm.
So even if you're not like maybe you had really bad grades in high school, and you don't get into the university right away, I would recommend going to a community college because they have those programs that they can offer you to get into a university.
Yeah, or especially like in your instance too, if you don't know what you want to do, but you know you want to go to college, like, and going to a community college is great because the risk is less, and you're also
Yeah.
able to kind of take it more on a broader scale, versus like honing in on something right away. And it's cheaper.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
cheaper approach as well.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. So again, I forgot to mention by my second semester at in the community college, so my second semester, I wrote a letter to the tribe for the tribal scholarship. And I explained to them that this is my situation. Like, I know I didn't get the scholarship the first semester, and I understand from my previous history, like, I fucked up. I was young. I fucked up, but this is 6 years later, and I understand, now the situation. And basically, I
Yeah.
apologize.
You
Like,
took
I took a shot.
accountability. Love
Yeah, I took a
that.
shot into the dark and told them I was sorry and that I could really use their assistance. And they reviewed it with the board, and they ended up starting to get me back the tribal scholarship for my second semester.
And then she was on the board the next year.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, but to be fair, that didn't cover it my whole tuition. I still had
Yeah.
to pay out of my pocket. It was a lot less on me, but I still had to pay out of pocket for my community college. And again, I was actually working 2 jobs and going to community
That's
college.
impressive.
Yeah, I was on a roll. So then I decided that I was going to go to GCU, and then it came back to that question of, do I want to continue online or on campus? So I had originally chose online, which is kind of funny.
Oh,
So
really? I
I
didn't know
chose
that.
online, yeah, and not too like soon before it started. And I think it had to do with also a scholarship. I think it was like only like $1,000, but it was something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were like, if you go on campus, you can get this scholarship. So I was like, okay, like I'll just go on campus. Honestly, it's probably better for me anyway. And like
Yeah.
it gives me that experience of going to a university.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I went to a GCU in person and it was great. I loved it. Like, I loved the campus. It was easy to navigate parking. I did quit one of my jobs, so I left Jimmy John's and I was working at Nike part-time but full-time hours. So continuing to get that tribal scholarship, but I this is when I started taking out student loans, actually.
Mhm.
So because it was a university, because I stopped working like a lot, I had to take out some student loans to pay for the remainder of my tuition at GCU.
Mhm.
So that's kind of when I got into student loans. But I guess I'll talk a little bit about that later. So got a student loan, got a tribal scholarship, finished my degree in business management at GCU. Definitely recommend GCU if anybody's considering it, because it's a really great school.
Yeah, I think it is. And they have like they're growing just as much as like, any other university is. They do some
Yeah.
good stuff over there. Even
Yeah. And I
sports
know
wise.
no, yes, and their sports are insane. Also, they have a really good sports medicine route or sports management route. There you go.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So they're really putting a lot of effort into sports there. But also one thing, just I'm going to throw this out there. Everybody knows GCU is a Christian college, right? So let me just put it out there that it is a Christian college, and yes, they do have, like, for those of you who had never gone to a Christian college, like, there are some like Christian aspects to it, but for the most part, it's not as bad as you think. I did have to take one, it's called a world view class. So basically they teach you like Christian things like the Bible
Oh,
and whatnot,
yeah.
but your prompts aren't really based on that. Their prompts are based on what you believe. So although you learn the Bible like in stories, they make you relate it to what you believe, which doesn't have to be Christianity. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was able to like write about like our culture and just other things. But I liked it. I think that part of it also kind of made it wholesome to me. I'm not Christian and, I'm not really religious like that. But I remember there were some classes where we had to pray before class.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, and like not all of them, but some of them did do that. Sometimes it would be the teacher really quick, or sometimes they would ask for like someone to volunteer. But I
Yeah.
think it creates a really good community aspect.
No, I
And
agree. I agree.
yeah, it was like a nice time to meditate, I guess. Like,
No,
even though maybe you not
yeah.
be partaking, like I still paid my respects and did what they did. And
Yeah, and I feel
I
like
like
it
that.
also kind of breaks the norm of like, college is so depending on your program can be so rigorous and like very
Yeah.
dependent on like your work, but it kind of gives you a moment for grace. Literally like
Yes.
whatever you define grace as, it literally gives you a moment to just sit there and appreciate where you're at, what you're doing, and how you're doing, you know? And I think that's something that I think that more institutions, whether it's religious or not, should implement more into, is like reflection and giving you time to just be.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because I learned later that my girlfriend actually went to a Christian college too. So we both,
Twinsies.
yeah, you know, we both had that experience of going there. So it was nice. It was a great experience. And I was able to get my undergrad in business management from there. And this is when things change a little. So when I was going for my undergrad at GCU, I wanted to get an internship because I had
Oh,
so
look
much
at her.
experience. Yeah, now I wanted an internship.
Growth.
I wanted to get an internship because I didn't have the experience that I needed to get a job with my degree and how far I am in life, I guess, is what I can
Yeah.
explain it as. So I worked in retail as a general manager, and yes, that was good, and that did help me with everything further down my life, and still helps me to this day. And then I worked in retail. So imagine like me getting this degree and then being like, oh, like I'm gonna go apply for these jobs, you know.
Yeah.
It seemed a little it dawned on me that I needed experience. So I started applying to internships, and I found this internship in change management. I had no idea what change management was at the time that I applied. I ended up taking a class the next semester, but no idea what it was. And I applied at a utility company in Phoenix. So I remember the interview, and luckily, again, I'm a really good speaker, and this is when that communication comes in handy, but I'm really good at interviews, basically. So I had a lot of experience with Jimmy John's to help. I ended up getting this internship in change management. And it turns out that change management in companies happens to usually be in technology departments.
Oh.
And it's because a lot of the change that companies go through is in technology, right? Like
Yeah.
you get new computers, you get new software, and who's the people that have to come in and help teach this change? Like change management people.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting a change management internship, and it was on a technology department. So as I was going through that, I was nearing the end of my degree, and they were like, "Are you going to start applying to jobs?" So I was like, "Oh my gosh, like here I am now, like got to apply to jobs."
Part 2.
But part 2, what happened was the team that I was on ended up merging with another team, and they were the business process management team. So they
Okay.
were the people who defined the processes. So actually one process that I worked with was what happens when someone dies and then they're working for a company. So they literally like make
Oh.
like, you know, in the magazines where they do the arrows and you get to, do you do this or that? Yes or
Yeah,
no? And
yeah,
you work your way through.
yeah.
That's what those people do. So they figure out like exactly what process is going to be implemented in businesses.
Interesting.
But a lot of those people also did analytics, and they use this thing called Tableau, or there's other ones, but basically it's software, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
you're analyzing things, you're sequencing things, and I really like that. I really liked learning analytics. I ended up in my free time in my internship, I was teaching myself how to code in Python because that was also something that was helpful in that area.
Nerd.
Oh my god. So basically, I was teaching myself technology, and I was like, I want to get into business analytics. Like I want to do what those people are doing. So at this point, I was like, okay, now I'm really screwed because I want a job in something I have no experience whatsoever. I got this business degree, which isn't a technology degree, and I had not applied to jobs yet. And it was coming up in March of the year that I was going to graduate. So, like January. So I started applying for jobs in January. Like that was the time when everybody was applying for jobs because then
Yeah, that's
instructors
valid.
start asking you like, do you have a job lined up, you know?
Yeah.
And I had an instructor and he was really, really big about applying to rotational programs. He wanted all his students to get a rotational job because he said that's how he got the most experience, how he's been able to get his experience.
Okay.
So I was looking for rotational jobs. Like I was looking and I knew that I wanted to move out of state. I was very inspired by Navi to move out of state, but I also always wanted to move to Denver.
Yeah.
And that was like, okay, this is my chance. Like, I can get away from the heat. I have a degree now. I can get a job and I have some experience. So I started looking at jobs in Minnesota and in Denver. And I found one rotational program. And it said career launch program. And it was basically like a program that allows you to rotate into different positions.
Yeah.
And it was at a utility company. And I applied to that and I luckily got into that program. And since I got that job, I was like, I'm not going to stop now with my education, because if I stop now, I'll probably never get my master's degree, because I had already stopped before. So I was like, why stop if I can just keep continuing this route? So I ended up applying to University of Denver. I applied to University of Denver before I even knew I was moving to Denver.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that and that's why you were looking like solely at Denver for the job.
No. Oh. I always wanted to move to Denver, but that didn't come into mind until like later. But I applied to University of Denver for my master's degree because...
But online, that's what it was.
Online. I did it online in technology management. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to get into business analytics. I wanted to get into technology, but I only had a business degree. So I couldn't go for like a master's in computer science or in something like that, because I didn't have the prereqs needed for that. Basically, I would have joined it and I would have been in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Or like I wouldn't have known anything about it. So I applied for technology management because it was basically aimed at people who want to become managers in technology. So I applied to that and I started doing my first semester. It was kind of like general stuff and that. And then I found out I had the job. So it was like all great because everything was in Denver. Worked out perfectly for me. So I had a full-time job now. I was going to get my master's degree. And by the second semester, I was like, I want to do more coding. Like I was like, I can learn this technology management stuff, but I basically learned this with my business degree.
Mm-hmm.
I need the skills to computer science is what I needed. So I asked the lady if I could change my program to information and communication technology. So basically IT. And the courses that are outlined in that are more like, okay, coding, Java, object-oriented programming, and like more technical stuff.
Yeah.
Web design and stuff like that. And that's what I wanted to know more about. So luckily I got into that. And then also with my work, I ended up landing a rotation. I told them, I was like, I really want to get into technology. So I got into a rotation that had to do with cloud computing, which is actually what I do now. So I got this rotational role and now I'm going to school for what I'm doing at work. It was great. So full-time rotational program, going to school. And then also I couldn't get my tribal scholarship because unfortunately the semesters didn't work out the way that they liked. So I was taking 2 classes at a time, and the way that the university I was at is split out into quarters, and the tribal scholarship is very traditional in a sense of they like fall and spring semester, like all their deadlines go with that. So I couldn't get my tribal scholarship no more, and I did have to pay on a student loan. Luckily, my employer actually offers $5,000 a year through scholarships, so I did depend on that as well. So now I'm using my work, which is also what I would tell people. Like, if you're going to find a job, and you want to go to school, like look for ones that offer tuition reimbursement.
Yes.
Because that helped me a lot.
Yes, especially if you're planning on going back to school as well. So
yeah. And if you don't know, like talk to your employer. Like sometimes you don't know that they may be certain colleges that you have to go to, but they still have a lot of programs. Luckily mine was a little bit more lenient on where you can go and stuff like that. But so I utilized that and ended up getting my degree, and I ended up getting out of the rotational program because that team that I was on, they offered me a full-time position, like to be on their team. So I ended up living the best of all worlds. I ended up actually using my degree on my job, and now I have my master's in IT basically, and Yeah. So it's kind of leading me up. I think now that I'm actually doing engineering stuff, so that's what I am. I'm a cloud engineer. Um, I Now I want to get more into the management side. So I
Yeah.
want to go back, but it'll help me in the long run. And it was a long process. Like it was a lot of learning. Like I said, I dropped out. Now I have some student loans that I have to pay off, but the cost of taking out those loans now, like I have a really good job and I have
Mhm.
resources and I feel comfortable enough to pay back my student loans, and I'll update you guys when I get those paid off. But it's gotten me where I want to be, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And you did
so
all of your classes online at during your master's, right?
yes, I did.
Oh.
And I worked full time throughout my whole graduate
What
program.
was that balance like? I'm actually interested in kind of knowing how that is because I don't know if I could. I think I've only taken like
Yeah.
maybe 2 online classes or something like that.
I think luckily my employer is very supportive of it. So like sometimes they would be like, oh, if you need to take some time off, you can do that. But um I took asynchronous classes. So there are online classes where you can do like synchronous at
Mm,
certain specific times. I
yeah.
did mine asynchronous. So I was able to work and then get off and do homework. It took a lot of discipline. like,
Yeah, I'm sure.
and I think one thing I do regret is I always use homework for an excuse. So like
Mm,
trying to balance also social life because I was in a new job, a new city, and I really wish that I would have prioritized a lot more relationships. But that would have came with a lot more accountability with my homework. So
yeah.
not holding off on homework till the weekend because that's when a lot of things happen. Like I should
Yeah.
have, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Um, yeah, so that was one thing that was a little hard to balance, but for the most part, I think I just got into the groove. Again, my school only did 2 classes a quarter, so that was also kind of helpful. At first I started off
Oh,
with 1 class a quarter. And that was because I didn't know how I was going to be able to handle it. So I would also recommend that if people are deciding to go online, like, and you have the choices to do certain amount of classes, start with the least, get into
yeah.
the groove, especially if you haven't been in school for a while, like do the least because it'll help you in the long run. And then after I was like, okay, I think I can manage 2. And then that's how I stuck with 2. I
Mm,
have a friend who went to the same school and she was taking 3. And I'm like,
oh
you
my god,
crazy. Yeah. While working full time. I'm like,
that's crazy.
yeah.
That's awesome though.
Yeah. But so differences there, like I mean, I did mine all over the place. My degrees are all not in the same thing, communications,
Yeah.
business management to IT, like that is all over the place. And I think that a lot of people get overwhelmed too with once you choose a degree, like that you're stuck with that, but I would like to say that that is not true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like everything helps out with
Oh,
everything
yeah.
else.
I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of your experience like leading to, as much as they are very different, I think it all kind of ended up taking like things that you've already learned or like you knew you were
Yeah.
interested in and like at some point, it just kind of put the puzzle together, it sounds like, for the most part.
Yeah.
So I think that I would say it's very successful. And sometimes that's what people need too, like to kind of just put the puzzle together. Like you might have all the
Mhm.
answers right in front of you about like what you're interested in, what you could see yourself doing, what you're like want to spend your time worth doing.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of fact of figuring out how to put it into something that you can see because there's so much things you can do in the world. There's so much career paths and
Mhm.
everything. And like even when I started in college, I was like, wow, that's a career path. I didn't even know that you could do that. Or like,
Yeah.
meeting all these people that are
Yeah.
like random things that are very
Mhm.
tailored and the ability to like make your own path as well. Like, there's things
Yeah.
out there that are not even being done that are extremely needed and you
Yeah.
might be the person to do that.
Yep. Yeah, that's why I think also when I worked at Jimmy John's, that's when I kind of gained that I like to ask people what they do because
Yeah.
we had so many people come in and we would deliver to so many places and I'm like, "What do you do?" And I think that's kind of where that interest in careers started for me and I realized like it's a lot more broader than cuz when I was in high school, like becoming a nurse was general. Like everybody wanted to be a
Mhm.
nurse because I feel like that's the only thing we knew of, you know?
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
you become a nurse, a doctor, like it was very narrow mindset. But as I met more people when I went to my internship and I did all these things, like I learned career paths and I
Mhm.
learned that like you said, there are some random ass jobs out there. Like one that I
Yeah.
always think one that I always mention to like a lot of young kids. I'm like, you do know there is a career now where you can drive drones for companies. Like
Mhm.
it's called the unarmed aerial man, whatever, UAM. You go to school to learn to fly drones and how to collect the data from those drones. Like
Yeah.
if that's
That's
something you
interesting.
like go to school for that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think too, like looking back, like specifically like at my journey too, like I never thought that I could ever be a doctor. And, I think that that's just something, you don't see a lot of doctors that when like look like you don't
Yeah.
like the process to being a doctor just seems like inevitable. Like it just seems like,
Mhm.
you know, freaking nonsense. Like how do you even do that?
Yeah.
And like obviously as I've gone through my journey now, well, it's very rigorous and very tough, and you do have to like perform well and make yourself the best candidate you can be. It's not impossible. It's just
Yeah.
asking the right questions and trying to figure out, those timelines, what is needed, because I think that's the whole point of it. It's not meant for people to like be impossible or like not
Mhm.
be like for certain people to achieve. It's more of the fact of like taking the initiative to ask the questions, figure out those what is needed, who do you need to talk to, making connections and kind of putting yourself in those situations where, you should probably be asking the most questions that you can.
Yes,
And
for sure.
and I think that's kind of where I'm at now. Like sometimes I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't know if I can do this, but
Mhm.
just kind of looking back and remembering, okay, like you have the resources to do it. It's in front of you. It's just the matter of fact of you doing it and also taking the time to work a little bit harder
Yeah.
than
Yeah,
you would like to. So it's definitely been
for
a
sure.
journey.
For sure. I would definitely say it's not easy.
Oh yeah.
Like, if you're expecting it to be easy, like, it's not, no matter where you're at, like, it's tough. And, like I said, I dropped out the first time because it was tough, and then I learned, like, to persevere, and it made it even harder because now I was working and having to go to school, and I had to pay for it, like, it was hard, and I think that has to be taken into consideration. But
Yeah.
asking questions is always nice because they do offer things for people. Like you said, like you
Mhm.
may think it's unattainable, but if you just ask the right questions, like you can get help. For example, I have a coworker, and because we have that employer like tuition reimbursement, it
Mhm.
gets reimbursed at the end of the semester when you complete it, but you have to pay for your tuition before, right? So I
Oh.
didn't know this, and I should have known this because I was paying out of pocket and then getting the money later. But she asked the school if she can pay her tuition at the end of the semester. And
Oh.
they all they required was like a letter from her employer that said that she was going to get that at the end. So she was able to
Oh.
hold off on her tuition like until the end when she got reimbursed for it.
Yeah, and I guess that
And
kinda goes to show, like, ask a question, like, you don't know what the answer is gonna be, but at least,
yeah.
like, the worst it can be is no,
Yeah.
and that's can't really get worse than that.
Yeah.
So might as well ask it, and you never know what the answer will be
Yeah.
because, there's I think it's just really they want people to ask the question. That's really what they want is
Mhm.
people to be there and feel interested in it, and I think that shows more than anything, good grades
Yeah.
and all. I think that they want people there in those positions that actually want to be there. And,
Yeah.
it goes hand in hand.
Yeah. And my last advice would be to recommend people to apply for internships, and you are not too old for an internship
Oh,
because that was one thing I was scared of was when I was applying for internships. I was like, oh, maybe they're not gonna like me because I'm older. Like
yeah.
I already have other experience, but
I feel like they
I
would
was still
prefer that.
able to yeah, I was still able to get an internship even though I was like older and it helped me a lot. And I was able to get both my degrees by 28, which is a little bit later, but it's still like pretty good. So it's never too late to go back. Like
It's never too late to go back.
like I hear that all the time with people, especially when I'm in Ubers. They're like, but now I don't know. And I'm like, well, I went back. I'm like, I took a 6 year like break and then I decided to go back. It's funny because I just had this conversation yesterday with my Uber driver, and I think he thought I was really young. And I told him that. I was like, well, I like took a 6-year break, and I was like, now I have my master's degree. And he's like, what? And he's like, really? And he was like, I'm 32. I'm like, you are not. You're only like 2 years older than me. I'm like, you can go back.
Yeah.
You can
I
go
think
back.
on the contrary too, like it's okay to take breaks. Like
Yeah.
I was really beating myself up in the past, like, in the past year or two, for not being able to go straight into medical school. And even now,
Mm-hmm.
like, like I know my gap year is going to be a lot longer than I think I wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think I needed this break. And I, again, like obviously, like being a doctor, like I want to be the best provider, best person I can be because I'm dealing with people's lives. I'm dealing with,
Yeah.
it's not a very like, typical job where, you can't not worry about yourself. Like you have to worry about, or you should be worrying about yourself in order to give the best quality care that you can. So yeah, on the contrary, it's okay to take a break. There's time. There really is
Yeah.
time to do what you want to do. And
Yeah. And
there's,
you don't have to rush it. Take it slow too. Like I said, take one class at a time if that's what helps you for now.
I think that's something I kind of like look back and I'm like, what happened? What would happen if I did an extra year? Did the typical
Yeah.
4-year college? Like, what kind of person I'd be? But too late now.
Oh my God. Cool. Well, that was very informative. And thanks everyone for bearing with us on this a little bit longer episode, but there was a lot to unpack there.
Yeah,
And we
and
hope it was really valuable to you guys.
yeah, and if there's a question or something that we didn't address or that, there's some clarity needed or, something again we didn't answer, please feel free to drop a comment or, reach out to us directly through our Instagram messages. Again, we both love to talk, and that's probably exactly why we started doing a podcast, is because we love having these conversations. And if there's something you're interested in, what we do, or what our backgrounds are in, our education institutions and whatnot, please feel free to reach out. Again, we're happy to help where we can. And we also want to know what your journey was like, because again, everybody's journey is different. I love hearing what people's education journey was, if it was, traditional, non-traditional, up and down, around the road, and, what made people want to go to school. Because I think that there's always a deeper meaning behind people's reasons to going to school.
Yeah.
So definitely join the conversation there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't forget to like this video, share this video. We now post on not only YouTube, but we have our episodes available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Yep.
So if you guys can't watch us, you can always listen to us. It might be a little bit more convenient for you guys. But make sure you follow those as well if you are listening on there, and rate it. It would be nice to have some ratings on our podcasts. And yeah, like the video, subscribe, share, and we will talk to you guys next week. Bye.